Here we have an interesting discussion between God and Moses. Moses at the burning bush, and God says to him, "Go take the Jewish people out from Egypt." And he said, "I can't do that, God. I can't do it. I can't even speak properly." He had some sort of a weird speech impediment. So God said, "Listen, don't worry about it. I'll be with you, and you'll do okay." Moses said, "Listen, I got a better idea. You know what? Send Aaron. He really knows how to do it." And God says, "Mi sam pela adam." Who makes a mouth for a person? Who gives people a mouth? Right? I give you a mouth. Don't worry about it. I'll be with you. with this. Okay, let's go. We're going to do the first paragraph a little bit quickly. But it's pretty interesting. Listen to this. So what's going on over here? Moses meets God. God meets Moses in Mount Sinai. It was Mount Sinai. That was the place where the burning bush was. It was a Mount Sinai. And he said, God said to Moses, take the Jews out. And Moses said, I can't do it. Now, this is God speaking to Moses. God, right? This is the creator of the whole universe speaking to Moses. And Moses has doubts. What's going on over here? How can Moses have doubts about a ship? So he says, God says back to Moses, Mi sam pel adam. Who gave a person a mouth to speak? Who gave people, where'd you get your mouth from? Anyway, right? That you can't speak. You think I can't cure that? What's going on? Right? So, I mean, did really Moses, that's what really Moses' question was? I can't do it because I can't speak properly. You can't fix me up. Right? God creates the whole world. How can it be? So let's go. Having to understand, what Moshe says, Lo ish devorim anochi. Moses says, I can't take the Jews out of Egypt. I'm going to have to talk. I'll have to talk to Paro. I'll have to talk to the Jews. I have to do a lot of talking, and I'm a covered peh. I can't speak. He covered peh. Doesn't exactly say what was his problem, but it was definitely a speech impediment. This is covered peh. Maybe he just had trouble getting the words out or whatever, but he certainly was not a fit in any way to be a salesman or a public speaker. Anything depends on speech, not Moses. Umasha Heshiv, that what he said back to him, Misam Pel Adam. God said back to Moses, who gave people mouths? Where did mouths come from? Shu Kola Maksha. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. Moses didn't know this. Mi Hashem, who was God? Mi Hasam Pel Adam, who created Moses? I mean, Moses was a religious person, right? Moses was a direct descendant from Levi. It was one of the sons of Yaakov. And these people really believed in God. And not just regular God, not just God of all the other religions, God of the Jews. The God of the Jews is different from any of the other religions. What's the God of the Jews? That God is creating everything all the time. And God cares about everything that he creates. So Moses certainly knew that God was creating everything. Everything that was God, he knew there was. Or maybe you can say, listen, he was brought up in Paro's house, but he was always in contact with his mother and his sister. Son. They brought him up, at least from the beginning. They brought him up. And it doesn't make any difference, even if they didn't. He inherited this feeling of the certainty of who God is. He knew that he was a Jew, right? So how can it be that Moses, here now Moses is talking to God. He's talking to God. And God is speaking to him. It's the same God that gave the Torah, the same God that creates the world. And Moses says, taking the Jews out of Egypt, you can do it, God. You don't need me. None of that. I can't speak properly. And God said, listen, I can do it on my own, but I don't want to do it on my own. I want you to do it. Go. He says, but Moses said, but I can't. I can't do it because I can't speak properly. And God says back to him, where do you think you got your mouth from? Now Moses knew what he got his mouth from God. And he knew that God was creating everything. Okay, so let's do this. And I'm going to try to do this quickly here, this first part. The Indian Yuvans has been understood. Okay, I'm going to tell you the answer in short is that Moshe was too high. It wasn't that he had a speech impediment because he was too low. There was something wrong with his muscles or something like that. He was too high. He was spiritually too high. He couldn't come down low. Here we go. Let's go. And is like this. There's a book which is called Sefer Tamuna. It's a Kabbalistic book. And it says like this, that this world it says that the whole creation is going to last for 7,000 years. That's what it says, 7,000 years. It says, and this world is the second 1,000-year period. It's called the Shemitah Sheniyas. It's the second period. What do they call it? Cycle. Oh, second cycle. That's what it says. Shemitah Achaz, the first one was Nimshachas Memidas Chesed. It was from what's called kindness, so a different type of a world. The Shemitah Dakshav, and now this second 1,000 years is from Pachad, from Yira. Therefore, everything is very, very difficult. In this, there was the punishments, there was the flood, etc. Namely, that there was the destruction. Also, nowadays, the destruction of the temple, and etc. Masha Enki, which is not the case, the Shemitah Rishona, which was Midas HaChesed. Okay, now he's not talking about so much the 7,000 years as periods of creation. Also the Torah was Bo'ofen Acher. So that's what it says over there, that there was a world before this world, and there was a Torah, and there was everything. That's what all these Kabbalistic books say. And then there was only good and destruction. And there was not like what we're learning. This is the opinion of the Sefer Tamuna, and after this is drawn all the other Makabbalim, the later Kabbalists. They're doing bazeh. There has to be. We have to have 5 more cycles of creation. There's going to be after this. So in other words, according to that opinion, what was there? The world existed. There were people. There was everything, but it was different. People were different. I don't know. The world was different. There was a different Torah. There was a different. That's what the Kabbalists say, and they say because there has to be 7 cycles like this. So we're on the second cycle. There's going to be a new world, a new creation, whatever it is, a new creation, and it's going to be the whole thing is going to be from the beginning, brand new, right? But the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, he revolutionized the whole business. And he disagreed with everyone. And that's what Chabad goes, and all modern Kabbalah also goes in with this. It says, the Arizal disagrees, and but Ma'ashalam do that it says that you have to have 5 more cycles of creation. But Gambinian, what it says that this world was the Shemitah Shein, is that this world is a new world, a new order. This is the second cycle. Okay, even though the Arizal does hold that this is the second cycle, but not like they said. All the Kabbalists say that there was a different world. Different worlds were created. A different heavens, a different earth, a whole different order. There was a different Torah. There was a different Jewish people. That's what the other Kabbalists say. The Arizal says not so, that this world was created. There's only one world. From the beginning, but he agrees there are 7 cycles, and this is the second cycle, but we'll see how. Therefore, the world begins with Beit. He says, therefore, the Torah begins with the letter Beit, right? Bereshit, to tell us that there already was one cycle, and now we're in a second cycle. Oh, but that's what the others say. That's what the others say. That now the Torah we have, this is the second Torah. This is a different Torah than it was before. It was a different. We don't even know what it was. The first Torah. But the Arizal says not so. But the Arizal explains differently. She'ena kavana, that what it says that there's 7 cycles. It doesn't mean to say shahaya olam gashmi, that there was a different physical world like this physical world now. In Shemayim, heavens and earth, but it just was different. Different laws of nature, who knows what, different plants, different this. No. Ki zeh lo haya. This was not, says the Arizal. If so, what does it mean there were 7 cycles? And this is the Rak b'shmita zu davka lavad. All there was is, if you want to call it this cycle, there's only one cycle, says the Arizal. That's this. And this cycle is going to be 7,000 years. Opinion of Shemitah that was before that, this is the idea of the world. Okay, this is the idea of spiritual worlds. That's what he wants to say, that there were different cycles. So it says, okay, number one, this world is going to be 7,000 years. That's a different thing. But that's what it says, that there were different worlds. He agrees, but not physical worlds. That what it says, that there was a world before this world. He's talking about a different order, which was called Tohu. There were no people, there was no free will, there was no different Torah, and there's only one Torah, only one world, but there were spiritual cycle, there were spiritual, I said, levels, which prepared for this world. Maybe you can almost say something like a fetus in the mother's womb. So there's like different stages of the fetus, but that doesn't mean that there's different fetuses and different stages in the creation. One stage is a spiritual level, which is called the world of Tohu. And we're going to see in a moment that that's where Moses came from. We'll see. Namely, Inyan, this is what's called the Zayin Malachim. This is what's called the 7 primordial kings of Tohu. This is hinted at in Parshas Vayishlach. We had it before in the book of Genesis. Right at the end. This is called the 7 kings that they died. Right at the end of Parshas Vayishlach, it talks over there about here. Let me get there. So 1 second. It says over here, these are the names of the kings. 1 second. Here it goes here. These are those of Esav. These are the names of Esav, and then it says over here, this is Esav, Aluf, Kanaz. 1 minute. Shuval. 1 second, give me a second. These are the kings. It's in Parshas Vayishlach, chapter Lamed Vav, chapter 36 of Genesis, the book of Genesis, chapter 36, sentence 31. These are the kings that ruled in the land of Edom before there was a king in Israel. There wasn't Bela, and Bela died, and then there was Yovav, and then after that there was the Husham, and then there was, anyway, it lists all these 7 kings. So it says this is really hinting at a level, an order of spirituality that preceded this world, which is called Tohu. Now, that it preceded the world doesn't mean that it stopped. It still is now. This is before time. This is just a level of creation. This is called Tohu. And it says that they died, that this is the idea of the sphere Ruchnis. These are spiritual spheres of God, like I said, the 10 spheres. Like it said, we've explained other places what Tohu is and how the vessels broke and everything. And nowadays, this is what's called the world of Tikkun. That's world afterwards. So according to the Arizal, there was basically only two cycles. One cycle was the world of Tohu, and now we have the world of Tikkun. Okay. There were 2 souls that came from this world of Tikkun, of Tohu, I'm sorry. There were 2 souls that came from this previous order of creation, from the world of Tohu, that comes before the world of Tikkun, and they came and they were drawn into this world, the Shemitah Shenis, to this world which is called the 2nd cycle. And this is which is called Tikkun. Ours is called Tikkun. And this is Chanoch and Moshe. Chanoch and Moshe. Good. Chanoch and Moshe. So let's say you have, like, sometimes there's people, you see that there's people that are gifted, for instance. There are people that are gifted. They're just gifted, right? They're just gifted. Sometimes there's child prodigies. Child prodigies. The child, when he's 3, they say Mozart was like that. He was 3 years old. He was already writing symphonies. I don't know the history, but let's just say he was already writing symphonies, and he already knew music immediately, and he intuitively he knew music. Well, there's people that intuitively they feel God. Intuitively, they feel that there's a creator, and they know what the creator wants. Intuitively, right? One of them was Moses, and before that there was one that was called Chanoch. Like it says, V'yisaleh Chanoch et Elokim. It says Chanoch walked with God, and saying that what kavar hitalech, he already walked with God in what's called the 1st cycle. And also Moses. Moses was, Minamayim Mishistiu, it says that Moses was drawn out from the water. Hainu Mishmita Rishona. He was drawn he was drawn from the first cycle we're talking about, which is water, which that's hinting at the aspect of kindness, chesed. Hainu Shisham. Whatever. Oh, chesed. That the Shemitah Rishona, which that's the thing of God's kindness. The first cycle was of pure kindness. What does it mean, kindness? There's no law, and there's just pure godliness. Everything is just purely godly. And that was one of the reasons why it says that this order of Tohu, God created it in order to break it, but it was pure godliness. It's above all the other, above Atzilut, above all these other levels of holiness we're talking about. That's where Moses came from. It's called water. That's called water. The first cycle is called water. Okay. What's the point of all this? We want to explain how high Moses was, and that's the reason he couldn't speak. He was too high, couldn't come down. Let's go. From this first cycle, which was called Tohu, which was called pure kindness of God, Mishitiu, that Moses was drawn out. That's why it's called Moshe Masa. He was drawn out, pulled up. The Shemitah, the Aksha of now, the Ikar Yeridasam, and Lazua Shemitah, and the fact that Moses came down to this this world, this order called Shemitah, this order of creation, who kadei in order to fix up the worlds. Kehem shorsham gavoim, because they're very, very high. Yan, because heyosam lamaila, they are above the bechinas neshamos the Shemitah zu. Our life, and people know that there is such a thing like that. There's all these, Marvel comics and something where it becomes some sort of a person with just unnatural powers to do good. And he, of course, wars against the people who have unnatural powers to do bad. But unnatural powers to do bad, that's not such a big novelty. The big novelty is somebody can come to save us from this. Right? So there comes a Superman, whatever it is, a man, and he can save us from this. Well, because he has senses, he has abilities, he has power, he can see through walls, he can do whatever he wants to. Well, that's basically what the leaders of all the religions are. They all claim that came along the Superman, and he told us what's really right. He knows what's right. No, everyone is just wandering around in the darkness, and this person comes and he founds a new religion, and we are going in his way, and we don't know anything, nothing. We just have to blindly follow this person, and then you're going to go into heaven. And that's all the religions are. All the religions are that way. And the reason that they are that way is because it's true. There is such a thing like that. Those people happen to be not so true. They're not true, but there is such a thing. It's almost like there are people that are atheists, for instance, and they say that faith is a bad thing. Faith is bad. Can't have faith. Only just facts, what you see in front of your eyes, that's what's really good. Only faith is good. But the fact of the matter is it's not so. The truth that there's faith can be mislead you. But faith enables you to connect to something that's above understanding. Above understanding. And that's what Moses was. Moses was a person that was above understanding, but truth. Not misusing this idea of above understanding. Faith. Listen, it's the same thing like in business. Business is based on faith, right? You put your money somewhere, you invest it, and you have faith that it's going to be, and there's people that misuse this. They can cheat you and trick you. Okay, but Moses, on the other hand, he was the true example of a true leader that truly had an insight and inspiration from a totally higher level of truth. We're talking about truth here. We're not talking about spirituality. We're talking about what is truth. But in this world, people feel that if you do something that makes you feel good, whatever, you have another zero in your bank account, that makes you feel good. That's truth. That's truth. That's truth, reality. You open up your bank account and you say, well, I only have $100 on my bank account. It says, 1 minute, what is this? There's another zero here. Let me count this here. 1, 2, 3 zeros. That's 1,000. Hey, look, he tells his wife, look, I got 1,000. She says, what are you talking about? You miscounted it. This is not 3 zeros. There's 4 zeros. You got 10,000. Ooh, that makes a person happy. That's truth, right? That's truth, right? Well, to a certain degree it is, but it's not really true truth, right? Why is it that you have money in the bank account? It makes you feel good. That's the way people are created. Well, the fact of the matter is people are also created if they feel the source of money. They feel the source of meaning. They feel the source of this. They also feel good. And that's what Moses came from. Moses came from a higher level, right? Like these Mozart or something, a higher level of harmony, of music, of this. Moses came from a higher level of reality. And because that higher level of reality, that's called Tohu, Hainu Shisham, that there is found, Bittul, is total surrender to God more than is found in this world now, in this order. Because you have to remember, again, now we're saying, who wants to be surrendered to God? What are you talking about? I'm taking my whole identity away. It says, not so. We have to remember that what is the truth? That we are being created. We're being created. God is creating us. And he's creating us because he wants us to feel separate from him. And everybody has a different personality, and everybody has that. We've been through this so many times, but it's really true. And it's impossible to understand, but it is possible to perceive. And that's what Moses was coming to teach everyone. And in this order of reality called Tohu, it was very, very evident, obvious. The fact was obvious. We're being created. The whole world is this amazing, beautiful miracle. It's almost like saying, you go to a concert of Mozart or whatever, and you say, the music is coming from my ears. That's where music is coming. Music comes from your ears. He says, what are you talking about? Music comes from, there's an orchestra up there, and the orchestra is playing music from somebody else. The same thing, the world doesn't come from itself. The world just comes from itself. The world, there's an author to the world. There's an order to the world. There's creators, the players in the orchestra, which is creating the world, right? That's all the upper spherot and the upper worlds and everything. But there's a composer that he's composing the whole thing. Okay, and the people in Tohu, they feel this. Who are the people from Tohu? Two, Chanoch and Moses. That's it. And therefore, Moses said, "V'nachnu ma." When the people started complaining about Moshe, they said, listen, Nachnu, me and Aaron, his brother, said, Nachnu ma, we are nothing. We are nothing. Ha'ish Moshe anav mo. That's why Moses was so humble. Why was he so humble? He led all the Jewish people. He stood against all opposition. Right? How was he took everybody out? He stood firmly against Paro. How was he humble? Where do we see his humility? It says humility means that nothing that he did or said was from his own volition. Everything was true. Gam ra'ah sham neshamas gavoim. He also saw high souls, shalamayla mimenu, that are even higher than him, like Chanoch and Lemach. It says they were higher even. And therefore, Yardul and Shmitazu Takanda. Therefore, these souls came down into this world to fix it up. Shechanoch was before the generation of the flood. Chanoch, that it was all matachlis, a shiftless, the world was the lowest it could possibly be. Like it says, Kate's called Basar Bolaf, and God said, I made a big mistake to create people. I thought that people would be able to transform, or at least to defy their lower impulses, and I see it's exactly the opposite. People think that's the whole purpose to come to the world, is to follow these impulses. So I'm going to destroy the world. Chanoch came to the world, lataken, to fix it up. Shelo yachzor legamri latol vavo, so that it shouldn't be totally destroyed. Rakshia mabul, only that there should be a flood on the earth, the tire or it's in order to refine the world. Sheisharu Noach, that there would remain Noach, Ubanav and his sons, Kaimim Beteva. In other words, if it wasn't for Chanoch, God would have just really destroyed the whole world and started brand new, made a new Adam and everything. If there wasn't Chanoch, the world would have been totally destroyed. Lo nishar, even Noah and his sons wouldn't even remain. Became Moshe, and the same thing Moses. Moses came in order to redeem the Jewish people. Shia Matan Torah, there would be giving of the Torah by means of him. Oh, okay. So we see that Moses was a totally different type of a human being. He was the true leader. And what was he leading the people to? The truth. Moses knew the truth. Moses knew that God is creating everyone all the time, and he's creating everyone for a purpose. And that purpose is to transform our egotism into godliness, into Judaism. To do simply what's right, right? It's true that if you do certain things, you steal, you rob, you lie, you rape, you whatever, it feels good. And that's the point. There's certain feel goods that you have to defy, you have to not do. God created these things, and you have to not do them. And there's certain things that you don't want to do, to be kind, to be honest, you don't want to do, and you must do. But people don't want to do it. Why should they do it? So it comes down to Moses, and he says, I'll tell you why, because God really exists. And when you look at Moses, you know, here's a person that he knows it. He's not just making it up. He's not just a good speaker. He really knows and feels the truth. Moses also came to redeem the Jewish people. Shia matan Torah bal yado. It's almost like, let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say Mozart. Mozart comes into a home for the deaf. People that were deaf from the beginning, they were always deaf, and the owners of the place are deaf, and everybody's deaf. And he's coming, he's trying to tell people, listen, there's music. He writes it down on paper, there is music, right? And they look, they read, they don't know what he's talking about. They don't know what he's talking about. There's music. Somehow or other, he has to convince these people that they have this sense of hearing. And that there's a thing called hearing, and that when you hear, and that you can appreciate music, and music makes you feel good. It's a harmony. They don't know what's harmony, they don't know what's music, they don't know what's sound, they don't know nothing. But he perceives these things, Mozart. He perceives it. And somehow or other, he has to come and convince these people, right, not to smash violins or to wreck up pianos or something, because there's strings in these things. You can use the strings to wrap fish with or something, right? No, also, Moses comes to the world to tell the Jewish people not just the Jewish people tell the whole world what to do with yourself, what to do with your pleasures, what to do with your intellect, what to do properly. Right? Everybody's deaf. He says, well, he understands and he sees, and maybe a couple people he convinces, and they convince other people, and maybe he convinces them to also do maybe some sort of exercises or whatever it is, manipulations, that they can start to hear. Or start to see. They never dreamed it was such a thing. That's what Moses comes, a whole different thing. Okay, the difference between the world of Tohu and Tikkun we can know from Eitz Chaim, the book of Eitz Chaim. The world of Tohu, Loaya Partsufim, there was no order. Partsufim means there was no order of the Sfirot. There were 10 Sfirot. They were Bechinas Nekudot. They were little points. Something like a painter's palette before he mixes the colors. Right? Every color is pure. There's pure. What are the basic colors? I don't even remember. Blue and red, I think, and yellow or something. Anyway, the basic colors. So here we have, let's say, 10 Sfirot. And that's what God, the ingredients to make the world are these 10 Sfirot aspects of God. And these aspects of God, they were pure. That's the world of Tohu. There comes something that's called Nikudim. They're called points. Chesed, there was a point, and there was one unique, as I say, the in Hebrew the word is Yechidah. One particular aspect was Chesed, another one was Gevura, and it was God's pure kindness, pure. This is not understandable, but we see that there is in the world, we can see examples of God's kindness, just that he's creating us. God's power, life, there's a light, that's warm. We can see that in the world of Tohu, this was pure. This is where it was in its pure form. There were no details within these 10 Sfirot. There was no order, no harmony, no harmony. It's almost like an orchestra before, when it's tuning up, when it's warming up, where everybody just plays the bassoon and the tubas, and they're just going for it, the highest and the lowest and the fastest and the loudest. They're just warming up, right? That's the world of Tohu. The world of Tohu is all of these different aspects of God are in their pure form. Right? And that's where Moses comes from. We'll see. 1 second. Excuse me 1 minute. One minute. Oh. Okay, a little bit of this we're going to have to skip over here. Okay, so everything is pure. Masha Enkim, which is not the case, the world of Tikkun, which that's basically how the Torah starts off with Tikkun. God is making a world where Shinasa has Sfirot Bebechinas Partsufim. Partsufim means a whole personality, so to speak. Everything, every aspect of God is containing all the other aspects. So there's a potential for harmony. And it says from Chachma is what's called Abba. There's the Partsuf, it's called Abba, which are the 10 aspects of Chachma. And from the Vav Ketzavos, and from the what's called the 6, the different aspects are called Zer Anpin. Shehu nitchalek as asfiros vispashtos leprati pratim, that they can be divided up into tet 9 times 9, and in each one of them there was a head, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there's what's called the 5 chasadim, the 5 aspects of kindness of God. Hamavdilim. In other words, there's interaction. And until finally, it's what's called the 248 limbs. And from that comes the Torah. The Torah is this interaction of God's kindness and God's severity and God's wisdom and God's understanding and God's purpose. And all of this is all harmonized. That's called Hiskalos Apros. All the Sfirot are unified one with the other to the point where there can be this world, a real world. And there can be people. That's what's called the 248 positive powers of the soul, of the body. I'm sorry, the body, a person's heart, a person's mind. This is in the 248 limbs of, I'm sorry, the 248 positive powers of our soul, for instance, seeing, hearing, they go into the 248 limbs of the body. The power of seeing is in the eye. The power of hearing is in the ear. Also, the hand, power of hands, action is in the hands. Walking is in the feet. All of this is the idea of the world of tikkun, where everything is interacting one with the other. And even more, that everything is included one in the other. A person can have a pain in his head, and you can fix his feet. There's reflexology, that you do manipulations with your feet, and that heals your head. If you do a manipulation with this toe, it helps your eye, right? With this other toe, it helps your memory. Whatever, right? If your heart has a problem, you just take the big toe and you turn it right, you turn left, and all of a sudden it gets better. And there's every aspect of your body affects everything else. And that's the whole idea of the creation of the world with the Torah, that everything in the world is connected with everything else. And we see also the high thing, when a person thinks in his mind, you can move his toe immediately. So the highest is connected to the lowest is connected to the highest. Okay, why? Because that's what's called yosher. That's how God comes down. Godliness comes down straight. That's God, the speech of God in the creation, in the Torah. It's called God speaking. But whether it's talking about this ability of God to create a world where there is harmony and interaction, that's called the world of tikkun. Okay, so that's the beginning to the end, etc., etc. Okay, let's see if I can go there. Okay. So that's what he says. That's what in the world of tikkun, there's the special thing where the beginning is found in the end, and the end is found in the beginning. There's a high, there's some advantage to the end that's not in the head, and there's an advantage to the head which is not in the end. For instance, in the world, the way it's created now, the spiritual worlds are higher than the physical world. Spiritual worlds are higher. Spiritual worlds are more godly, they're more alive, they're more true. In this world, there's evil, there's bad, there's deception, there's confusion, right? In the upper worlds, there's no confusion. The angels up there, right? They don't get confused, you know. The kaddish. What did I say? 2 kaddishes? Maybe they should say. They don't have any confusion up there. What's going on, right? The angels of the side of God's kindness was called the camp of Machoil. They don't think, why change the dress? Where did I live? Maybe what are you doing over here? You're supposed to be in the camp of Machoil. There's no confusion, right? There's no confusion. Sins, the angels don't do sins. They see what God is. They feel that they're being created. They're happy to be created. They're happy to just be existing. And says that's the upper worlds. What's about the lower worlds? The lower worlds, it's terrible. But on the other hand, in the lower worlds, we can give God pleasure by using our free will to do what God that gives God pleasure. The upper worlds don't give God pleasure. So it says there's the higher worlds and the lower worlds. Okay. Okay, from this we can understand the difference between what's called a gulim of Tohu and yosher of Tikkun. A gulim means like rings, one encompassing the other, or let's say balls. They have it in Russia. They sell these, what is it, babushkas. One doll, you take the doll off, there's another doll inside you, there's another doll inside, but the dolls don't touch each other. There's no connection. The same thing is with this world of Tohu. There's what's called 10 sphirot, but they have no interaction with one another. Each one is like in a separate sphere of its own. That's called igulim, surrounding. And yosher of tikkun, but tikkun is what's called a line, and a line is you move the bottom of the line, it moves the top of the line. In Tohu, there was one under the other. There were like balls surrounding one the other, and there was no parts of, there was no interaction. Okay, and therefore there was not over there this whole idea of that the end affects the beginning and the beginning affects the end. That's the way, that's in the upper spiritual worlds. But in the world of Tikkun, that this world was created when God created the world. And that's what the whole Bible is talking about from the beginning of this Tikkun, this level of Tikkun. There's a lot of different vessels and a lot of different interaction and how do you say, harmony between all the different sphirot. So it loses on one hand its purity. The purity is not there because everything is mixed into the other. On the other hand, there's what's called harmony. Then the main emphasis in this world is what we call the vessels, not the lights of God. We don't feel godliness, but we do feel the creation. That there is what in the lowest levels, something that's not in the highest levels, and the highest levels is something that's not in the lowest level. That's this world of Tikkun. Like we said before, the higher level, that's spiritual, it's pure. But this level we have called service. We can serve God and we can make God happy. If so, it comes out that really in the end, you can't find a higher and a lower. That if the end has an advantage that the head doesn't have, so it ends up that in some ways the bottom is higher than the top. That's the idea of Moses, why Moses was so humble. Because Moshe felt that he was the highest of everybody, but he was lacking something that the lowest people do possess, and that is they can overcome all sorts of obstacles. Moses didn't have any personal obstacles. His whole obstacles were the Jewish people. He had to work with the Jewish people. Why did he work with the Jewish people? Because there's an advantage to the lowest that's not possessed by the highest. Because, in other words, there's an advantage to the physical commandments, which they are in one way higher than the Torah. Even though the Torah is the inside, the Torah is the inside of godliness, and the commandments are only the outside of godliness. But nevertheless, there is some advantage to doing the commandments over the learning Torah. Now, Moses, he was like from this world of Tohu. So his thing was only the Torah, the source of the Torah. He was above the whole world. That's why it says, so Moses felt that he was lacking something because he was lacking the world of deed. And the law is that you stop, if you're learning Torah, and there comes to do, you have to do a commandment that no one else can do. You have to do it, then you have to stop learning the Torah, which is so important, in order to do a commandment. All this is because there's something higher in doing deeds, which deeds come from what's called netzach, hod, and yesod. That's like the feet, which is above even from chachmei Eloah, from the head. So that's the big sin. There's all these people that try to replace Judaism, these religions that try to replace Judaism, and the place where they usually strike, if you want to call it the weak part of Judaism, are the commandments. Why? Because the commandments are physical. You don't see any godliness in the commandments. A person might think that what is this? The commandments, you have to do commandments. Let the people free. Free the spirit. The spirit wants to express itself. What do you have to put on these boxes on your arm and care exactly when Shabbat comes in? You cannot light a fire. If you do, the punishment is death. What type of a thing is that? The main thing is the spiritual, right? So he says, well, yeah, in one way, you're right. The main thing is the spiritual. But also the main thing is the physical. Well, which one? Make up your mind. Which is higher, the spiritual or the physical? So, right. That's right. They're both the highest. How can one be there? Says one has something that the other doesn't have. One has spirituality, pure, and the other one has what's called service of God. You can make God happy. This is what God wanted. God wanted there to be a physical world, not just to put us in a maze so we can get out of it and go to the world, upper worlds. We were there before we were in the world. And therefore, it says even the Hedjit should be Israel. Therefore, even the simplest Jew, when he does a commandment, and even without any intention, and he doesn't know any secrets, he asks some person on the streets, put on tefillin. He does it because he realizes that this is what God wants. As Yochel Yod, it could be that this is more dear, more precious in the eyes of Hashem, of God, than achat, in one way, in one aspect, than all of the deepest ideas of the biggest tzaddikim there could possibly be. Because there's a big advantage to those people who support the Torah more than even the greatest people of the generation. In other words, not only is no one dispensable, but everyone is more valuable than everybody else. And so it comes out that I'm more valuable than everyone else in the world, and everyone else in the world is more valuable than me. So how does that work? Can't possibly be, right? I mean, if I'm more valuable than everybody, so I'm more valuable, right? So of course, but everybody's also more. Everyone else is also an individual, and they're also higher than everyone else. So you have, let's say, about how many Jews are there in the world? 20 million Jews. And the fact of the matter is, in some way, every human being, there's 8 billion people. Everyone in the world has something that nobody else has, some good quality. But here we're dealing especially with the Jews. So every Jew has something that's better. So, and it ends up that Moses was lacking something that all the other Jews had, something special. So there's a big advantage to the head over the feet, and there's an advantage for the feet over the head. Everyone is a giver, and everyone has to be a receiver. But Moses, he was the ultimate giver. This is only in this physical world, the world of tikkun. That there it says that the beginning is stuck in the end. And that's where it is. Okay, that's where it already said that Moses, the soul of Moses, came from this world of Tohu, and it was drawn into the world of tikkun. And Moses was the level of what's called the highest aspect of tikkun. When it came in, this was what's called chachma, seeing. It says bo bayera rishid lo. It says that the beginning was seen to Moses. Therefore, Moses saw everything. Moshe saw everything in a way of seeing. The kol olam tikkun, the whole world of tikkun and atzilus and etc. By him, the whole world was just laid out in front of him. Umasha notes to chilasam b'sofa. That what it says that the end is in the beginning and the beginning is in the end. This was a new thing to Moses. Moses thought, I thought that the spiritual worlds were the highest, and I come from the highest worlds, and that's the highest thing. Suddenly Moses came into the world, and he saw, wow, there's an advantage to being a simple person that I didn't know about. Shari lo nimsa b'zeh in the world of Tohu didn't come. And Moses was very amazed by this. Therefore, Moshe was humble. Neged and neshamos by the souls of tikkun. But Omer said, "Shlach no biyad tishlach." That's the reason Moses said, "Send somebody else." Moses said, "I lack the aspect of lowness. I'm too spiritual. I know the truth. I feel godliness." And that's a big disadvantage in one way. What's the big disadvantage? That I have no problem serving God. I don't have to overcome anything. God doesn't get any pleasure from what I do. Right? It's like, if Albert Einstein solves a problem of multiplication, right? Multiplication. You put in front of Moses and you say, how much is 2 times 11? What type of question is this? 22. You put how much is in front of a child that's mentally impaired, something wrong with him. He had whatever this, and he had a problem. What's 2 times 11? He sits and he thinks and he thinks and he thinks and he thinks and he thinks. He gets an idea and he writes and he tries and this, and he comes and he says 22. Everybody in the crowd bursts out crying. That's wonderful. That is so beautiful. How did you do it? So by Moses, he said, by Einstein says 11, 2 times 11 is 22. Nobody claps their hands, nobody cries. When the child that's impaired, when he does it, the same thing, Moses came into the world, everyone's impaired. And they're serving God. They're saying 2 times 11 is 22. I said, I can't do that. If I had those handicaps like they did, I wouldn't be able to do it. Not only that, they give God pleasure that I don't give. The people in the world, they have an advantage more mimenu than him because they have the vessels of tikkun. They're the vessels, and in those vessels we said that the beginning is in the end, but the end is in the beginning, that the lowest level reaches the highest, which is not the case by Moses. Moses knew that high is high, and that's it. He was from the level of Tohu. That's what it said that Moses was hard of speaking, Kavod Lashon. What does it mean? Sheshorsho mito, that his source comes from Tohu, that over there were tremendously high lights. He couldn't come down into the world. He didn't know what it meant to be in the world. That's what it means. He was Kavod Peh. That's what it means that he was hard to speak. He couldn't come down. Lo yochal hashpia. He couldn't come down and give his light in his mind into any vessels, not even to the vessel of his mouth. And his soul was higher, so much higher than his body, that his soul couldn't even come into his body, couldn't speak. And this by him was a tremendous chisaron, it was a tremendous disadvantage. Umailat tikkun, the greatness of tikkun was that, excuse me, because the vessels were so thick, as they were able to hold on to these lights, these high lights, and they could reveal it into the world. Therefore, he said, Shalach b'yat shalach. Therefore, he said, God, listen, I got an idea. You give me these big revelations to give to the Jewish people. I'm going to go to the Jewish people, and they're going to say, okay, Moses, what do you got to say? You're going to take me out, and I'm going to go, I can't articulate. I can't bring the words together, right? I can't bring the. Therefore, he said, send somebody else. Send someone that's in the world of tikkun, because in tikkun, they have this thing of the advantage, how high the vessels are. And that the vessels, the physical world, in some way is higher than the physical. The physical is higher than the highest levels of spiritual, because of the vessels. And that was the claim of Moses, that he couldn't bring himself down to be so low. Later on, there's another mimer over here also, that the Jewish people in the desert, they complained and they said that we want to eat meat. And Moses said to God, well, I can give them fish. I can't even give them fish, right? You want me to give them fish? Do you have the fish? The people ask for meat, and Moses said, I can't give them fish. What's it talking about? So he said, meat is very physical, and fish are not so physical. The laws of fish, you don't have to slaughter a fish. You can pull a fish out of the water and just let them, you can eat the fish, right? A fish is more spiritual. And so he said, Moses said, I couldn't even come down to that level of giving them fish. So that's the thing of Moses, not that he was sick, not that Moses had a speech impediment because something was wrong with his mouth. No, he was too healthy. Moshe was too godly. He was too pure. It was too much truth. He couldn't bring this truth down into the physical world. And not only that, Moshe saw that there's an advantage to the physical world, to these low people, that he doesn't have. They can overcome their obstacles. And Moses, there was no obstacles. So it says, therefore, Moshe was hard of speaking. He couldn't speak. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. That's the basic mimer. He talks about more. We sort of skipped around, but that's the point that the Rebbe wants to get to, the highness of Moshe. And Mashiach is going to have the advantage He's going to bring these tremendously high lights, but into ways that we can understand. And that's what Chassidut is. That's basically what Chassidut Chabad is to take these high lights, which are of Tohu, and bring them into Tikkun so that we can get excited about the Creator, even in the most simple things that we do, right? In our business and in our, the talking to friends, everything we do, we can feel godliness in everything because there is godliness in creating in everything. We can feel it. Okay, let us now do the 1 second. 1 minute. Here we go. Turn this off.